A lot of people figure out how to make 100 grand a year. Very, not as hard as you think. Very, 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 very large percent of people who try across the jungle figure out how to make 100 grand. Million grand, a million grand, $1 million is much more difficult. And it's because to scale from 100 to a million, it's a 10 times, right? It's a 10x scale, but it's actually takes more than 10 times the skill. Okay? It's kind of like to bench press 100 pounds, or let's say 50 pounds, versus 500 pounds. It's more than 10 times harder. Okay? Because basically the entire planet could bench press 50 pounds. But more, so let's say 1 billion people can bench 50 pounds, right? But a tenth of that can't bench 500 pounds. Does that make sense? A tenth of that. It's not like it's not like 100 million people can now bench 500 pounds. So it's more than 10 times difficulty to go from making 100 grand to making a million. It's not difficult. It just takes more than 10 times the skill. Okay? It probably takes 30 times the skill. So to scale, the S in scale, I always think skill. Skillful people can scale. And so if you're stuck on your idea, whether it be e-commerce, social media marketing, if you listen to me and you got a service business can definitely be scaled to $1 million. One of the people who teach in my social media marketing agency, Joe Soto, he's got an agency that does over $1 million a year. He does like 1.5 million or something. So he's certainly scaled. I have a lot of people in my programs doing 100 grand a year, but he's scaled, and he definitely has more than 10 times the skill. So what you have to do is you have to focus on training a lot, okay? Like, how do you get a black belt in jiu-jitsu? It's more than 10 times harder. From blue belt to black belt. Blue belt's a second belt. To black belt is like 100 times harder. Higa Machado, who I trained under when I'm in LA, he said, Ty, I've trained whatever. Well, he said for every 250 people that he gives a blue belt, one focuses and trains long enough to get a black belt. 250 to 1 ratio. That's probably the ratio of people who make 100 grand a year, who figure out how to get to the jungle to make your first million, their first million. It's probably 250 to 1. And it's not because it's necessarily 250 times harder in the sense that you have to have a much higher IQ, or you have to, even have a better business idea. No, that's not it. You have to commit to train. So focus and scale comes from skill, and skill comes from training. And this is a bizarre thing. Like any sport, I played on one of the top high school basketball teams, Enloe in North Carolina. And North Carolina is the biggest basketball state. I think it has the most people in the pros. Michael Jordan's from there. Jerry Stackhouse was in my league. John Wall's from the same league that not the same year, but the same league. And we had drills. I mean, I went to a school, we had 7-foot center. We had we played Oak Hill. And we trained all the time. But then I meet people in business and I go, are you training? No, I just do my business. I'm just like, I'm like launching my business. I'm like, where's your training aspect? Training is where a master or a mentor gives you drills to do. That's why I tell people to read a book, because that's like a drill for business. People go, I don't need a book. Well, what you're saying to me is, no, Ty, I can become a black belt without repetitive skills. You need repetitive things you do every day. A good place to start is read more. You're going to meet people that tell you, oh, I didn't need to read and I made $1 million. Well, they're an aberration, they're rare, and there's usually a story behind them, like their parents had money or gave them a business or something. Trust me. Let's go to the top of the Forbes list if you want to argue with me. The skill of repetitively reading different books on different subjects to fill up your brain with skills. I'm not saying only books, but I'm just using books as an example. Okay, richest person in the world right now, richest man, Jeff Bezos. Not only does he read a lot, his first business was Amazon selling books. That's how much he loves books. He built his empire on books. And trust me, he reads a lot. There's a good book called The Everything Store about Jeff Bezos, and it talks about how he walks around with a copy of Made in America which is Sam Walton's autobiography on how Sam Walton built Walmart. And Jeff Bezos has read it so much the pages are falling apart. See, he trained to build skill. One of his training tools was reading. Okay? Second richest person in the world, Bill Gates. Bill Gates loves books so much that his wife and close friend says he goes on vacations that he calls them reading vacation. He literally takes a vacation just to catch up on all the books. He'll bring 17 or 20 to 40 books, and he'll just go on vacation for 2 weeks and literally just read 8 hours a day. That was when he was running the biggest company in the world simultaneously. He still made time. So you're going to tell me Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates need books, but you don't? Third, Warren Buffett, third richest person in the world most years, depending on the year. Well, Warren Buffett says to this day he still reads 500 pages a day, 5 days a week. He said at his prime he would read 800 pages, sometimes books, sometimes newspapers, and he would also read annual reports. That's how he found good investments. So there you go. You don't always have to read books. Read magazines, read long articles, read newspapers. There was a time in my life, I'm not doing as much as I should, but I subscribed to like 40 magazines and newspapers from around the world. Boy, that's good. In fact, I'm glad I'm doing this video just to remind me to get back on that train. I'm still subscribed to probably 10 different publications. I still spend over $30,000 a year on books, over $3,000 a month. So I'm not out of the game of training, but man, the more you learn, the more you earn. Because the process of reading, now I'll add to that watching YouTube videos. I go to a lot of conferences. There was a time in my life I committed to go to one conference a week. No, I couldn't keep it up. I wanted to do it for a whole year, but I did it. I probably went to like 8 conferences in 4 months or something. It was a little bit too much. But boy, if I had started, it would have been better than me going to 6th grade or 8th grade or 11th grade. It was like a waste. I should have been going to conferences, different ones, business ones, social ones, or networking events. Like these are all training the mind to scale. I scaled in 2014 on YouTube and video advertising because I was at some conference and someone looked at me. I don't even remember who it was. I wish I could thank him and said, Todd, I think you'd be good on YouTube. See, that wasn't even my idea. And since then, I'm at 1.9 billion minutes watched of my YouTube videos. That idea that I scaled with came from listening to other people. So I said books, newspapers, magazines, going to conferences and listening to speakers, YouTube videos, podcasts like you're on now, paid courses, consultants. I've got paid courses. I sell paid courses, but I also buy them. I've bought so many paid courses that aren't my own. Obviously, I wouldn't charge myself, but I pay consultants. I pay mentors. I've got people on the books that I literally pay every month just to be on retainer for me to ask them questions. People like Dr. David Budd. I'm like, the president has 15-person cabinet. I need at least 15 advisors. So this idea of focusing and scaling mostly will happen where you can go from 100 to 1,000,000 by imagining your mind as a sponge and you're just absorbing, you're putting yourself in a place to absorb more. Then the scaling comes naturally. People think scaling is very hard. It's not. It's a consequence. It's a repercussion of having trained correctly. Training brings skills. Skills brings scaling, effortless scaling, or somewhat effortless scaling.